Welcome to the On My Workbench channel. Back when our house was built, my father-in-law had the contractor build a 10-foot by 16-foot concrete deck on the back of the house. It can be seen in this photo. They dug 3 footers. 2 of the footers were perpendicular to the house and 1 footer was parallel with the house. The 2 perpendicular footers had a span of 10 feet and the parallel footer had a span of 16 feet. They built 3 stem walls on the 3 footers and filled the area within the stem walls with dirt and compacted the dirt and put a layer of gravel on top of the dirt and poured the concrete slab over the gravel and dirt. What they did not do was put any kind of steel reinforcement such as rebar or wire mesh reinforcement in the concrete. They had a width of 10 feet from the house and a length of 16 feet parallel to the house without any center support other than the dirt under it. Everything was fine for about 7 or 8 years. Then the dirt under the slab started to settle, and the slab no longer had any support in its center, so the concrete cracked, allowing water to creep under the slab, allowing the dirt to settle even more, to the point where the slab broke and sank, creating a low spot that held water, and in the wintertime the water froze, making it like an ice skating rink. It did have one unique characteristic. After it rained, when the water soaked through the cracks and started drying up, it looked like the Liberty Bell, crack and all. As we got older, we were nearly 70, we got more concerned that we could slip on the ice this winter. My wife and I have both slipped on the ice, and luckily neither of us were injured, but we thought it was just a matter of time before one or both of us could be. So we decided to replace it with a built-up porch and a synthetic deck. We started by removing the deck railing. We labeled where each of the parts went, because we planned on reusing the railing on the new porch deck. After we got the rails removed, we used a chalk line to mark the old slab where we wanted to cut it. To cut the concrete, I bought a 14-inch electric circular concrete saw from VEVOR.com for $150.99 with free shipping. A link will be in the description. For the price, it worked out very well. I cut the first section of concrete from the deck so I could see what we were up against. After cutting it, I had to use a large pry bar as a lever to remove it, and as I suspected, the dirt had settled, leaving the concrete slab with no support underneath. As I removed more of the concrete from the deck, it was evident that the dirt had settled even more the closer we got to the center, leaving the center of the slab with even less support. To remove the larger hunks of concrete, I used a John Deere tractor with a set of pallet forks attached to the front bucket. The tractor made it so much easier to pick up, remove, and dispose of the concrete. As we worked our way toward the back of the slab, the forks of the tractor could no longer reach the concrete. So I used a pry bar to move the hunks of concrete so I could put a chain around them and then could drag them with the tractor to the front so I could then reach them with the forks and pick them up with the tractor to dispose of them. After we got all the concrete removed, I removed the front stem wall and then started removing all the dirt. Once all the dirt was removed, it was time to start building the frame to support the new porch deck. I used 9 6x6s in 3 rows of 3. To dig the post holes, I used my Harbor Freight 6-inch post hole auger. While the Harbor Freight auger worked good to auger out the holes, it only had a 6-inch auger bit, so I had to get creative to get the 6x6s to fit the holes. Later I found that VEVOR.com had a 52cc post hole auger that comes with a 6-inch and a 10-inch auger bit for $148.99 with free shipping. A link will be in the description. Next, I measured the distance between the 2 perpendicular stem walls and divided it in half to find the center where one set of the 3 6x6s would go. Then I measured equal distances from each of the 2 perpendicular stem walls to determine the locations for the other 2 sets of 3 6x6s. Note, I had to be far enough away from the stem walls to clear the footers for the stem walls. Once I had these measurements, I drove wooden stakes in the ground where each of the 6x6s would go. Next, I leveled the dirt the best that I could. In the area where I'd be working, it was wet and hard to level. Once that was done, I used a Harbor Freight auger to auger the holes for the 6x6s. The Harbor Freight auger produces nice round holes, but I needed square holes to fit the 6x6s. So I used a 2-foot piece of 6x6 and welded up a handle so I could push it in the round holes to make them square. In doing so, the dirt from the sides of the holes would fall back down into the hole. So I used my post hole diggers to remove the dirt. Once I got the holes square and to the depth that I wanted, I put in the first 6x6 and then did the same for the next 2 holes. To get the final height that I wanted the deck to be, I fastened a 16-foot 2x8 to the back of the house at the level I wanted the deck to be, less the thickness of the decking. Next, I adjusted each set of the two 10-foot 2x8s to just touch the bottom of the 16-foot 2x8 and temporarily secured them in place with deck screws. Next, I used a level to level the parallel 10-foot 2x8s with a slight drop from the house to the front of the porch to help with water runoff. Once I had all the parallel 10-foot 2x8s attached to the 2x6s where I wanted them, I drilled a hole through one of the 2x8s and through the 2x6 and through the other 2x8 and put a 1/2-inch carriage bolt through all three with a flat washer, lock washer, and a nut. Next, we built the frame to hold the synthetic porch decking. We used 11 16-foot 2x8s on 12-inch centers with bracing in between each of the 16-foot 2x8s. I did not attach the frame to the parallel 2x8s. This was done so if I had any settling of the 2x6s over time, I could shim the frame to compensate for it. Once the frame was done, I laid the synthetic porch decking on top of the frame to get them in place and to screw them to the frame. I made a simple alignment jig from a small piece of sheet metal that I had salvaged from the outer jacket of an old water heater. After cutting out the sheet metal, I bent a tab up by 90 degrees on the left side of the jig to use as a handle to hold it while setting it in place. I filed out 2 notches on the right side of the jig with a round file for the locations of the deck screws that would hold the synthetic decking to the frame. I bent one end of the jig down by 90 degrees to use as a registering point so we could mark consistent locations for the deck screws. In this photo you can see my wife using the alignment jig. The following photos show just how consistent the marks for the screw locations are. Once we had the decking fastened down, we reinstalled the porch rails. As can be seen here, I used a ratchet strap to temporarily hold the rails together while I put in the screws that held them together. I put a 4x4 in the left front corner and 2x4s along the top and the bottom to have something to fasten the PVC lattice to. We had a special ordered lattice, and by the time it arrived, the weather had changed and it started raining and turned cold. I did not want to paint the wood in cold weather, so we temporarily put the lattice on to keep the critters from making a home under the porch. And in late spring we will remove the lattice, paint the wood flat black so it does not show up through the lattice, and reinstall the lattice. For the most of the build, we got very lucky and had nice weather. Please check back with the On My Workbench channel for more videos on cool stuff. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and click the little bell. And thanks for watching the On My Workbench channel.